Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. It is, of course, Wednesday, June 25th, 2014, and we are almost 6 years into the green shoot recovery, what Ben Bernanke called green shoots not too long ago, with rates still at 0%, and interest rates over in Europe turning negative. They're so upbeat on the economic outlook. We had a report today released that showed the real truth and the real reality behind the growth rate, otherwise known as the GDP here in America, with the U.S. economy shrinking more than expected in quarter one. Now, of course, the Ponzi schemers that make up the Federal Reserve and the Commerce Department first reported that the economy grew in quarter one, January, February, March, at a 1% pace, only to admit now that the drop was actually negative, and they were off by almost 4%. From a positive 1% to a negative almost 3%, at negative 2.9%. This is good as it gets in a Ponzi scheme economy. And again, keep in mind, interest rates still at zero, going almost 6 years, and the Federal Reserve buying tons and tons of debt, escalating the U.S. national debt to a growing $17.5 trillion plus dollars. Of course, also buying mortgage-backed securities at a very heavy clip on a monthly basis since the collapse started in 2008 and had been in the works for over several decades, courtesy of other financial terrorists like Alan Greenspan. Of course, Ben Bernanke inheriting that crown, and now Mr. Janet Yellen inheriting that crown. Again, admitting that the growth rate was actually negative in quarter one. It wasn't the 1% that they first reported. It actually was negative 2.9%. Almost a 4% difference from their actual original projection. Could you imagine having projections that bad? Well, the Federal Reserve does, the Commerce Department does, and the U.S. government does. But they do say while the economy's woes have been largely blamed on an unusually cold winter, yeah, that's right, the negative 2.9% is entirely blamed on cold weather. That's right, those green shoots have been covered over with snow. Isn't that sad? And I also found it interesting in the article here, they say that the U.S. economy contracted at a much steeper pace than previously estimated in the first quarter, but there are indications that growth has since rebounded strongly. See how they have to put a positive spin on a piece of dog shit, on a giant turd that the U.S. economy just laid? You know, it's almost like, why do they even report these initial numbers if they're this wrong? If you're reporting 1% growth and it's actually negative 2.9%, why even come out with the original numbers? Why not just wait till we get the actual figures to show that the U.S. economy laid a giant dump right on our computer screens, which is actually what happened. Now, of course, even though the economy isn't growing, it's actually turning negative, and the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government and the Commerce Department have been dead wrong about the growth prospects. That's one of the reasons why they've taken rates zero, and they're still zero today, going almost 6 years after the 2008 financial collapse. Wall Street really doesn't care. They've actually turned stocks higher today. The stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, not only hitting new close to all-time highs in all the averages, the Dow, the S&P 500, and the technology sector, the NASDAQ, with the Dow Jones up roughly 40, 50 points on the news. Now, of course, the reason for this rebound here has nothing to do with the fact that the economy is actually shrinking. It has everything to do with cheap credit, cheap money, 0% interest rates, and the Ponzi scheme that is the Federal Reserve. Of course, Janet Yellen speaking not too long ago, about a week or so ago, saying that she actually thinks the market's fairly valued. Yeah, that's right. The Federal Reserve actually tells Americans now what they think about the valuation of the stock market. I want you to think about that for a moment. Supposedly, originally, the Federal Reserve mandate was to maintain price stability in our market and also to maintain full employment. Those are the two mandates. Now, they've added a third and a fourth mandate. The third mandate being market manipulation, bailouts, 0% interest rates, and cheap credit being printed out of thin air, and also a valuation mandate by Janet Yellen now, who's now going to tell Wall Street kings that run the show, these hedge funds and institutional investors, when she thinks the market is fairly under or overvalued. So Wall Street, of course, is waiting for when Janet Yellen tells them to get out. Now, of course, we have an all-time complacency in the stock market today because of the financial gangbanging that makes up the Federal Reserve and this market manipulation. In fact, if you take a look at the VIX, the CBOE Volatility Index, and you break it out for a 10-year period, this, of course, measures options trading and the risk that investors perceive to be available in the market at any given point or snapshot in time. You can see here during the 2008 and 2009 financial crash, it shot like a parabolic bullet. Let me take this out to 10 years again. A parabolic bullet to about 80 on the VIX. Again, institutional investors largely buying the VIX, a measure of market volatility and perceived risk. You can see here we had a couple more blips as we came from the 2008 financial crash, and now we're just moving down and trickling down the line of complacency. Again, folks, easy credit, free money at the Federal Reserve, 0% interest rates, and unregulated lending standards from the even too bigger to fail banks now, because they're all bigger and more concentrated now since the bailouts. In fact, it's wiped out all the small and medium banks. We have all-time lows in complacency. Really, it's like Wall Street's taking a dump as well on the negative 2.9% dump figures that they've already laid. In the meantime, we had some of the numbers and some of the drama of the politics occurring last night all across mainstream television and the election. And we had some interesting comments from GOP establishment pick Senator Marco Rubio, which actually, you know, if we're going to look at the establishment, I actually kind of like this guy. I like what he has to say, even though I realize that the right-left paradigm is dead and it's an illusion and it's just meant to keep us fighting each other. But he says here that the Republican establishment has forgotten about the free enterprise and limited government principles that the country needs to get back on track. Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Senator, but I couldn't also agree more that our entire system is being artificially stimulated, dominated by a criminal Federal Reserve system, which is manipulating our market into infinity while the real economy posts negative numbers. Again, a negative 2.9% annual percentage rate drop. A giant turd posting, yet the stock market rallying, again, on thin air and the Ponzi scheme that makes up the Federal Reserve. Get it out everywhere, friends. Make sure to let your friends, family, and colleagues know that the economy is doing so well that it actually posted an almost negative 3% drop in quarter one with 0% interest rates. Again, as good as it gets in America, folks, and in an economy where 70%, 2/3 of GDP growth is made up of the consumer and consumer spending. You better hope to God that the buying sheep will keep buying, keep on taking more debt, keep on refinancing, and keep on buying those Escalades. Because if they don't, this house of cards is going to come crashing down. I'm Christopher Green. Get it out everywhere, make it viral, hard-hitting and in your face, and click the link below to support our sponsor.